Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the situation where your wife's chronic pain or depression uniquely affects one area of your life called you never get laid. And before we get to that exciting topic, I want to tell you to subscribe. The most recent one was about how you're caught between a rock and a hard place. You can't tell your wife that she's always beautiful, but you can't tell her that she looks better in some slutty-ass lingerie than usually. So, you're kind of fucked, but I unfuck you in that episode. So please do subscribe so you can get unfucked. So anyway, let's go to this topic, which, of course, I've got to amuse myself somehow. So I make the headlines much more, obviously eye-catching than, I think these podcasts are pretty, interesting, but I try to make the headlines even more interesting. And so it can draw you in, especially if you're like, well, that's a load of shit. Like, if you're a woman, you're like, my chronic pain does impact me from having sex. I can never have sex because of my chronic pain, and that's just some garbage. She just must be super unempathic. Listen, I'm pretty empathic. Like, my entire career is empathizing. So, if there's any career where you got to be empathic, it's this one. But what people don't seem to understand is that when you say that you cannot do something because of something, then you can't just randomly say that. There have to be other areas in which you also can't do something because of something. So let's get more granular here. So if you say that your chronic pain, and what is chronic pain? Migraine, which I suffer from, fibro, chronic fatigue, IBS, back pain. Some people have vaginismus or vagina pain. People have all sorts of fucking pain. They have idiopathic pain. Idiopathic means, we have no idea why you have it. And that doesn't always mean it's psychosomatic either, you could have pain for very real reasons, nerve damage or whatever. Obviously, maybe it's not obvious to you, just like whatever your job is would not be obvious to me. But what all of these things, chronic pain is associated with depression. That doesn't mean that it's fake, because depression's not fake. Depression's real. And chronic pain is real. You feel you are in pain, for sure. I've had disabling migraines, and frequently do, and have tried really everything. But, And same with depression. I constantly talk about depression can be intractable. Treatment-resistant depression is more common than people think. So and by treatment-resistant, I mean, it's funny, I always have to go down. I have to, explain a lot, so I barely can get through a sentence without having to explain another layer. I would use parentheses if we were writing, but we're speaking. And what treatment resistant means is that you've tried at least, I think it's 3 or something antidepressants and it didn't work. And so, or other treatments, but usually 3 rounds of medication. From what I remember, it could be more than that. But most people with depression have tried infinity and nothing works. So for the treatment resistant people, for some lucky people, something does work. So anyway, if you have treatment resistant depression or chronic pain that can't be really gotten a hold of or anything, most of this is situated now. People are increasingly thinking in childhood trauma. And genetically, some people are also wired to be more neurotic. That's the actual name for the personality trait, or highly sensitive and wired for depression and anxiety. So all of these things, the same areas in the brain are implicated in depression, pain, just bad, the area of your brain for bad lights up. And so there are people that are more sensitive to that stuff than others, and who had more difficult childhoods, and who, were caught off track, but knocked off track by something like, an actual assault of some sort to the senses. So, for example, you could have been kind of doing all right, and then you got into a car accident, right? And from that point on, even though nobody can understand how the car accident is related to you later having chronic pain, somehow that knocked your whole, your fragile system was knocked off course by this onslaught. And it's a diathesis stress model of mental illness. You had a pre-existing issue, a pre-existing existing predisposition for something, and then there was a stress to the system that knocked you off track, and then that manifested. Whereas in a different sort of situation, had you not had a car accident, maybe you never would have ended up with chronic pain. But had you had maybe a divorce, you would have ended up with chronic pain or another trauma, because it's kind of like your system was just almost waiting for a trauma to happen because it had that innate genetic predisposition to have whatever, whether it's depression or pain or whatever. The point is, people with chronic pain are definitely experiencing pain. But there's all levels of pain, right? And there's all levels of what people tell themselves they can do with it. So let's just say that the pain is at a 10. But you got to look at what the person's doing with the rest of their life, right? So if the person is getting up every day and, getting on the subway and going to work, or they are, watching your multiple kids, some of which are toddlers and running around and doing a lot of physical shit, they can do things. They are mobile in the world. They're not bedbound. They're not bedridden. And it's a matter of values, quite honestly. It's really a matter of values, because people could have the most intense pain possible, but if they're getting up and moving around and doing other shit, then what is the issue with the sex life, Then we start to think that this is an issue with how they prioritize and view sex, because it seems like many other things, including for many people, even going to the gym and socializing and taking walks with the kids and doing all sorts of shit with the kids and driving. And there's just a lot of stuff that gets done. And not all of these are in situations none of these are definitionally, for my purposes, in situations where they are single parents, because I'm addressing couples in this situation. So these women are all in situations where there is a co-parent, so it's not as though we're in a situation where through sheer adrenaline, they have to power through to keep their kids surviving. These are situations where, if God forbid they could not get out of bed because of a horrible, debilitating condition, the husband would have to take over. I mean, that's just how it would be when you have a co-parent, even if you are divorced. But we're talking about situations where that is not the case. And so at this point, it becomes where you have to really look at facts. Guys want to be nice. They want to think that their wives love them. Frequently, in spite of evidence that the woman does not prioritize them and may not love them. That's why I wrote a post recently called 10 Signs Your Wife is Just Not Into You. And I could talk about this in the inverse gender-wise for 10 Signs Your Husband's Just Not That Into You. I think I've written a post like that already. But it usually does not manifest that a man blames a chronic pain condition for not being able to have sex. So that's the unique situation that I'm describing here. It would be the equivalent, and I have frequently seen things like the man says that he can't search for a new job, but he can play video games. Or the man says that he cannot do housework, but then somehow he plays golf. Like he may say that his back hurts too much to go to the gym, but his back doesn't hurt too much to want to have sex. So it's all different. So what we're basically saying is there's a prioritization issue going on if your wife with chronic pain or depression, is doing other things. If she's not doing other things and she's on her back in bed, then just don't be an asshole and leave somebody in that condition, right? I mean, try to get her treatment. And I've written posts about what to do when your wife is depressed, what to do when your wife has chronic pain. And they basically all say, get them treatment and be empathic and really schedule them to see doctors and do your best to help them and to pick up all the slack in the interim while they're getting back on their feet. But, kind of like what you would do if your wife had cancer, you're not going to be worrying about having sex then. Hopefully you're not a huge sociopath, right, that would do that. But the point is if somebody has a chronic pain condition, but somehow they could still live the rest of their life, you got to look at it as a priority issue. And if they just cannot have sex because it hurts so much, but yet they engage in other physical activities, let's not forget that intercourse is not the only way to have sex, right? So, there's obviously many ways that they could have sex with you, and that would not hurt their vagina or put them in a certain position or anything. So that's what people do when they love their partner and, for example, they have a vagina issue, like some people have pain there, or some people have had nerve damage after a birth. That's kind of a common one. And if you still want to have an intimate life with your partner, of course you could still make it happen because you still have your hands, you still have your mouth, And so this is possible. So when it's not possible for some unknown reason, when you think about it, you got to understand that the children are prioritized. Work may be prioritized. You're not prioritized. Now, does this mean that you're a horrible victim of your terrible wife? Obviously not. I never say anything like that. But what you are is putting your head in the sand. And that probably goes with other aspects of your personality that are not wonderful, such as a desire to ignore problems in other areas of the relationship, the family, what have you. Maybe there's passivity going on, and you're passive in a range of areas. I don't know what's going on. Maybe your wife's just not in love with you anymore. Maybe you have had an empathic rupture due to something. Maybe she has nerve damage from the birth, but you know what? During the birth, you were an asshole. I don't really know. But what I do know is that if somebody is engaging in other life activities that are physical, and they're just not having any kind of sex with you at all, and the reason is because of the chronic pain / exhaustion / depression, there are so many ways that people get creative for things that they actually prioritize. So, for example, if your wife suffers from depression and she's like really shit at night and gets super exhausted at night, which happens to a lot of us women with depression, then she may front load her work hours to the start of the day, and she may be up and at 'em really early. That's when she may take her walk, and that's when she may make the kids lunches or whatever it is, so that she can use all of her energy when she has it. Or maybe there are days where she feels better than others, and in those days is when she takes the kids to the park, or when she snuggles with your kids and reads to them. But maybe it's based on the time of the month, maybe it's very bad before her period. So she decides that she's going to do things that aren't before her period. She's going to engage with the children or schedule social activities or whatever in the first 2 weeks of her menstrual cycle. I don't know how your wife copes with her stuff, but if she does cope with her stuff, but yet the only thing that she cannot do is have any form of sex with you, that's when you have to go deeper on why. Because a lot of guys, like whether it's depression or it's chronic pain, or it's some other idiopathic illness, they feel like they're being just a total asshole if they were to say, but why can you do these other things but not have sex with me? But that is a question. That's pretty fucking relevant, right? What are you expected to do, right? You're expected probably to work, to bring home a paycheck, to do shit with the kids. If you said that you were like too depressed to work, but you still were able to socialize, I don't think that's going to go over pretty well. Do you? It wouldn't for me, it wouldn't for anyone that I know. It just wouldn't, because that's saying that you would prioritize like just hanging out with friends over having a job, when there was an implicit contract, and this is an important key point, that you would be a working person that was providing for the family, either alone or with your wife's help and her working as well. There's also an implicit contract called "we are intimate in our marriage," and that's what a lot of men have a lot of trouble saying, because it makes you sound like an asshole or an anti-feminist or something, but it's true. And I've written about it before. Sex is part of a marital contract, and it does not have to mean intercourse. And quite honestly, if you don't want to give like a blowjob and you can't have sex, and you also think a hand job takes too much time, then there's not too many ways to say you mean nothing to me, that are easier than that. Like it's pretty obvious. So, but to these women's credit, some of the men don't even ask. So then they tell themselves, and they want to believe, and thus they do believe, because we all convince ourselves of things that we want to believe, that the man just doesn't really care that much, and he's just being a good guy, and it's the same to him either way, to masturbate or to have sex. He knows that sex bothers you, so, he's being a good guy, good partner, and we're, he's just kind of diverting his desire elsewhere. And if you've allowed your wife to think this, then you are at fault as well. It takes two to tango. So So if you have thought that like you need to divert your desire elsewhere, but you're secretly extremely sad and lonely, but you've never said that, then how is she to know it? I've gone over and over the fact that men and women think about sex entirely differently. She really thinks, as I've said numerous times, likely really thinks that sex is about the orgasm. If you're giving yourself an orgasm, there is no trouble. You're being a good guy and diverting your desire into something that you could just take care of yourself. And you guys are basically committed to raising the kids, staying in an intact family, and, and yeah, sure, you love each other. Sure. Yeah, sure. Why not? But that love is not really manifested in any sort of physical way because in her mind, she doesn't think too deeply about it. She really has zero desire. She doesn't want to prioritize the sex life because she doesn't have any spontaneous desire, just like all other women. Women with chronic pain or depression are certainly no different. They too have no spontaneous desire, but they never ever get themselves into the situation where they could see if they have responsive desire because they're using the chronic pain or the depression as like a way out. But yet there are plenty of women who are happily and closely connected and intimately connected with their partners who do have pain and chronic conditions of all sorts. There's women who have, I've worked with women who have all sorts of problems, quite honestly. And there's a normal distribution in the way that they deal with their sex life. And if they prioritize it in the way that they prioritize hanging out with the children or going to work or going to the gym or going to whatever, then it's a very different thing. Then it's something like, okay, well, we can only have sex in the morning, because that's when I don't have pain levels, and we don't usually do intercourse, but we do these other things. And then when I can, then we do intercourse or whatever else. But most of the time we cuddle, we do a hand job, we do something like that. And, this is kind of a regular part of our life. And that's how we do it. We do it when I have the energy and when I can, fully devote myself, but we do it fairly frequently. And by that, for married couples at this stage, it would be like 1-2 times a week, maybe every other week, but it's not never. When it's never, but yet the woman can do other things, is when you owe it to yourself. If this is a major source of sadness for you, then self-advocate and say something. Say, I notice that you do like all these other things, but then somehow we can't have any form of sexual contact at all, and what is that about? And maybe that's something that we should talk about with a counselor, because I feel really bad about it. And I'm sure that there are ways that I could be being a better husband that would make you want to do this, because I do see you do other things, and it's like kind of the emperor's new clothes here that I'm not allowed to say that. But I do. I see you doing other things. I see you went out, with your girlfriends. I see that you go to this. I see you go to that. Again, I'm not talking about somebody, God forbid, that is like literally in bed and cannot move and is suffering so badly. I'm not talking about that situation. In that situation, you got to be, a grown man and, help the person who you love that is suffering. But there are a lot of people who talk to me about a wife with depression or anxiety or chronic pain of various sorts that yet is living a full life in the absence of one thing. So that's the situation that I'm talking about. So that would be the situation where, like, if your husband was like unemployed. Okay, so there's your husband's unemployed because he's going through a massive depressive phase. He hasn't showered in a month. He's like suicidally depressed. Okay, get it. I totally would get why that guy's unemployed and he needs help stat. But then there's the husband who's unemployed and he's going to hang out with the guys, and he's going out drinking, and he's going to play golf, and he's carousing, he's playing video games, he's hanging out with the kids, he seems happy. Well, why isn't he working though, And it would be the same thing if the implicit marital contract was that both partners worked and the woman stopped. It's the same thing. The reason that I use it is because obviously, I don't stand on ceremony about being overly PC, and that is what it would be considered a pretty big breach of contract by a woman, is if the guy was just like, fuck it, I don't want to work anymore. Fuck this credit card debt. You could deal with it. Figure it out. No, that's like not allowed. But it also thus should not be allowed for the woman always wants to be taken care of. This is like a female thing. You're going to be pregnant. You need somebody who's going to take care of you, at least in some regard. And the male thing is to want physical contact. That's a guy thing. And I have people telling me that chronic pain, is stopping them from getting even the most cursory physical contact, stuff that wouldn't make anybody hurt in any way. All right, so hopefully this was interesting to you. I have enough people, unfortunately, struggling with this issue. I also have a post that I've written about it that I could link you to if your wife is newly diagnosed with some sort of chronic pain. I wrote this years ago because, of course, as I said, there's such a profound overlap with depression that in the mental health field, we see people with chronic pain a lot. And I have nothing but empathy for them. In this situation, though, there's more going on, and you got to look underneath the surface. All right, I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day. Oh, here is a PS for you guys. This doesn't usually happen. It's like finding a hidden song on a CD for those of us who are old enough to have CDs. I will, though, say that if you do not know how to make your wife's chronic pain feel better by massaging her or in any way helping her physically, basically just by massage, which is a real big deal for women, especially with back pain or migraine, then, you're not doing your part. So I am going to have a podcast coming up about that. I already have a post called "If You Massage Your Wife a Lot More, She May Want Sex a Lot More." So you should also take that into account if you are listening to this and being like, oh, well, yeah, sure, I'm validated now. If you're not actually helping your wife's chronic pain in any way, then you're the problem too. So keep that in mind. All right, bye guys.